guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to decorate those tombstones that we made last week. Well, in order to decorate our tombstones, we're going to need some latex paint. I've been spreading myself a little thin lately, so I'm going to pass the show over to Ken, and he can take it from here.
So like Norman said, we're going to be painting these up, and I'm going to take you through each of the steps that I'm going to use. I mean, of course, you can paint them however you like. They're your tombstones, they're your project. But I'm going to be using latex paint, and I'm going to be using flat latex. And these are going to have to start off with a base coat. And I found an old thing of ceiling paint, and it's white. So I'm going to add some black to make it gray. We're going to mix that up and add a base coat of flat gray to these tombstones. So paint can be expensive, and you're going to be using a fair bit of it to paint these up. So just use what you have around the house. Everyone underneath a set of stairs or in a crawl space has some old cans of paint that have been kicking around forever and a day that you could probably use up for this. And that's where these paints came from. The only thing I really purchased was the black to tint this. And just mix up whatever color you want. Like I said in the last segment, I'm going to be doing a gray. I don't know how dark until I actually see it mixed. So I'm just going to get this open, stir it up, and you can tell it's been around for a while because it's giving me a hard time to open. But we're going to mix it up, and I'll show you the color we end up with. Well, the reason I was having so many problems is because this can of paint is so old that the lid is actually rusted shut to it. So I'm kind of glad to be getting rid of it. This is also the type of ceiling paint that is tinted kind of pink and it dries white. So, I mean, I don't care. I'm going to use it up, and we're going to mix in some of our black here. And like I said, I'll show you the color we end up with once I get it mixed. So there is the color of gray that I ended up with. It's just a light gray, just a subtle gray, kind of a concrete color. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and paint every tombstone this particular color gray. So the purpose of the base coat that we're going to be adding here is strictly to hide the color of the styrofoam, which in this case is blue. There are many different types of styrofoam that you could have used to make your tombstones. You may have used the pink kind. I think there's an orange kind out there too. But the whole point, as I say, of the base coat is to get in here and to completely mask and hide the blue. So make sure you get in with a brush and get all these parts that you broke up and inside all of the letters. And for the flat surfaces, we're going to roller that on just for ease of use and to speed it up a bit. So I don't think you need a video of me sitting here painting in all these little nooks and crannies because it's going to take a while. I think you know what to do, and you'll see me when I finish filling in these areas. Well, you can see here that we've got the lettering filled in. And don't worry about missing little nooks and crannies. I mean, do your best to fill it in, but you'll be here forever trying to fill it all in. Just do your best to get as much of it as you can, and as the stages go on of painting, you'll end up filling in the rest. So it's looking great. It's starting to look more and more like concrete, a little more creepy rather than that pretty blue color of the insulation. But now you want to get a foam roller or whatever roller you have in your shop, and just to save yourself some time and aggravation, just go over the whole tombstone here with your base coat color, give it a good coating, and then once you get them all finished with your base coat and all the nooks and crannies, we're going to move on to the next step. The base coat is done on all 6 tombstones. And truth be told, with 2 of us working at it, it took about 2 hours just to get the base coat on. Something to keep in mind while working on these. any wear and tear that would be on an actual tombstone would be vertical. So try to keep your brush strokes from top to bottom or bottom to top, as well as your roller. Run it from top to bottom so that if you should get any roller marks, it'll just blend in with any wear and tear that we're going to add to it later on. So leave this overnight, let them dry up, and when we come back in the morning, we're going to move on with the next step to painting our tombstones. Well, here we are, it's the next morning, and our base coat is dry, and you can see that these things just look great. The next step is to darken our letters and to darken the areas that we broke out. So we're going to head over to the bench with our flat black latex paint, some water, and a brush. So to start this process, we have our flat black paint here. And as I said earlier in the video, this is latex. You don't want to use oil paints, only because the oil base in it is going to affect and eat the styrofoam. But what we're going to do here is put a little bit of this paint into a jar, just like that. And I want to water it down. So I'm going to take some water here, and you don't want to make it too thin, but you want it a little runnier than normal. So we're going to put that little bit of water in there and give it a mix. Now that we have this thinner paint mixture, I may even get that a little bit thinner than that. But what we're going to do is use the same brush that we used to fill in these areas in the first place. And we're going to dab in the black. And we're trying to accentuate the details of this, kind of in the same way that a stage actor puts on heavy makeup so that their expressions, etc., show from a distance when they're performing. It's the same sort of thing. We're going to be looking at this from a distance, and you want people to be able to see the details. So we're just going to come into these areas, and it doesn't have to be perfect, because you want it to have variations of the gray and the black in here. You don't want it solid black, or maybe you do. I mean, if you do, that's your choice. But for me, I want variations of the black and the gray. So I'm just going to get in there with a brush and this watered down paint and dab it in. Now, I've got some areas there that are getting onto our tombstone. Just wipe it off. I mean, you're going to have spillover, and that extra black that's on there is going to give a really nice effect when the whole thing is said and done. So for these smaller areas, get a small brush with your watered down paint and just get in there and dab those cracks. You know, make them really visible. Now you can see there that I've gone over and spilt onto the surface. And like I said, I'm okay with that because we can just give it a wipe. And that's just going to add to the effect of looking worn. So let's carry on and do all of this, including your letters, fill them right in, and then we can move on from there. Now, as I said in another segment earlier, when you're cleaning up the spillover of the paint, you can see how this black here, I'm not sure how well it shows up on camera, but it's giving that old kind of smeared up look here. But make sure you're dragging it vertically along the tombstone, because you don't want it to be all over the place. Remember, that wear goes down as it gets older. So you really want it to be dragging top to bottom. So we'll just carry on here, but just something to keep in mind, the direction in which you're cleaning up your overspills or overbrushings or whatever you want to call it. And again here for these smaller areas, smaller brush. Just get in there with the watered down paint and we can just get some of that in that crack. And again, you got some spillage over, drag it down. Just like this, drag it down. Don't go sideways, top to bottom. Just like that. The watered down paint really goes a long way to helping you get it down in those cracks, to really bring out the details of your aging of the tombstone. Now that one there is a real mess, and I'll just show you here, that's not a big deal. A little bit of water on an old rag, and we're just gonna drag it down. Just like that. It cleans up pretty easily, and by dragging it down like that, you're really helping to age it and give it that older look. And there we have all of our cracks and distressing all highlighted with the black, and you can really see how that just pulls everything out. So now that that's done, you want to darken your letters, and we're going to do it in the same process. Just get some paint in there and fill in all your letters. If you get some around the edge, don't worry about it. Just do exactly like what you did with the crevices and drag it down off of the tombstone. I'm getting in quite a mess here. I think I'm going to be putting on some latex gloves to assist me in trying to keep my hands a little cleaner. But live and learn. I should have had them on right from the get-go. Alright, so there we've got that end done, and you can see that I've spilled over the edge just a little bit on some of it. It's no big deal. Don't get your panties in a bunch. Just get yourself that wet rag, and from here, drag it down. Just like that. You can see how well that really shows up now. That looks great. Okay, so fill in the rest of your letters. And when I get the letters filled in, I'm going to come back and show you what we ended up with. And there we have the lettering done. What a difference. I mean, from the base coat of the gray to the darkened letters and the darkened distressing of the tombstone, it really brings out its features, and you can see how it really pops when you get that black in there in all of the letters and in the distressed areas. So that step is done. I'm going to do all the rest of mine, and once that is done, we're going to move on to a technique called dry brushing. Well, it's a very different look from what we started with. All of the broken concrete sections really pop, and so do all the lettering styles. It looks fantastic. So the next step, as I said, is dry brushing. And it's pretty much what it sounds like, and I'm going to walk you through how to do it. Alright, so all of our accents are dry, and the next step is called dry brushing. And what it does is it's just another process for weathering. So you want to take your brush and dip it in some paint. Now I'm going to use a lighter paint, in this case it's white. And you want to get as much paint off of it as you can, hence the term dry brushing. And then when you get it so that it's pretty much dry, you just want to drag it down over your tombstone, just like this. And you can put as little or as much pressure as you want to give it that weathered look, kind of like it's been worn and everything is kind of running down off of it. So just keep using the dry brushing until you get the effect that you want. And then that will be it for that process. It's not rocket science. You want to go from top to bottom, that's all. There's really no trick to it, and there's really no way to screw it up. If you're not happy with the results that you get, just paint over it. That's the whole benefit of this entire project, is that if you don't like what you do, you can paint over it. So let's continue dry brushing this, and that's pretty much going to be close to the end for this particular tombstone. So you can decide how much or how little of this dry brushing you want to do. I already did this one once, and I decided I want a little more because I was noticing that if I get to the bottom of the letters and drag the paint down from the bottom of the letters, I get these really cool kind of white streaky areas here, which really show as some wear and tear on the tombstone and gives it that extra little bit of aging. I really like that effect, so it's my tombstones. I added it, and you could do the same to yours if you like. So you do as little or as much as you want. There is no formula for this, and there is no artistic rules other than do what looks good to you. So another step with the dry brushing while we're at it is the areas that we've darkened here for our weathering. You just want to do a tiny bit of dry brushing in there, not a lot, just a touch, and it'll lighten it up and it'll give it an extra dimension of being worn and torn, and it also gives it just a little more depth. And that is all she wrote for the dry brushing. It gives it quite a bit of dimension, both in the areas that we carved out for the decaying of the stone, and as well with the lettering. It just gives it that little extra something to make it look even older and even more worn. Well, there's one more step to do, and it's optional, as is each one of these that I've done. But at this point in time, we're going to mix up a little bit of green paint and see if we can't add a little bit of a mossy color to areas of each headstone. The next and final step, for me anyway, of decorating these tombstones is I want to add a little bit of a green color, kind of like an algae. You know, just give a little more weathering. So I've got this green paint. It's not super green, it's kind of a light pale green. I just want to darken it up just a bit. So I'm going to add a little bit of this watered down black that we mixed up for our last step, or sorry, for the darkening step. And I'm just going to keep adding a little bit of this black until I get a green that I'm happy with. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. It's all personal preference. And once I get the color of green that I like, I'm going to water it down. And once I get it watered down, I'm going to use an old rag. You can use a sea sponge or whatever you like, but I'm going to use something that will make a random pattern. And I'm going to be placing a very watery kind of a wash onto the tombstones, kind of to mimic algae or just give it a little bit of color. And it's an optional step. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but I think it could look cool. So there's the green I think I'm going to use. So I'm going to water that down and I'll show you how to apply it. Now here we have poor Paul's tombstone, and we're just going to put a little bit of the green onto our rag, and I'm just got it crumpled up, and we're just going to pick some spots and just kind of dab it on there. Now it doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just going to dab it on, and you kind of want to leave it a little bit loose. Like, you don't want to fill it in. You don't want solid green areas. Now for my liking, this could probably be a little more intense of a green, but it's not, and I don't have one, and I'm trying to use what I have. So this I think is just going to be fine for this particular application. So just pick some random spots and add some green to it, just like that. And if it's too pronounced for you, then that's nothing to worry about. You can take another rag and get it wet with clean water, rinse it off, and then just dab around to soften it up. And that will just ease off on the color just a little bit. Just like that. So you can soften those edges as much as you want, as much or as little. It's up to you. Again, it's your project. Have some fun with it. And with that, I'm going to call this tombstone completed. And you can carry on, do all of your tombstones as I'm going to do. And this is it for the decorating. We are done. They are completed. And now there's one more thing left to show you, and that's how to mount them. Now all the painting is done, and it's time to mount these tombstones. And you don't want to be messing around with, you know, getting the mounting bars or pipes exactly right. So for my installation, I'm using 1/2-inch electrical conduit to mount them. I'm cutting 12-inch pieces, and that should be sufficient to mount them into the ground. But I've taken a piece of 2x4, and it's 16 inches long, and I've drilled a hole in either side. These are 3/4 inch diameter holes, and they're 12 inches apart. And if you remember back to when we actually made the tombstones in part 1 of this series, that 12 inches was our nominal measurement that we decided on for our mounting PVCs that went inside the tombstones. So this is basically your installation jig. And I'm going to go outside now, just outside the shop here, and I'm going to mount one, and I'm going to show you exactly how easy it is to mount these into your Halloween decorations by using a jig similar to this. So you can see here, it's as simple as laying your conduits or your reinforcing rod or whatever it is that you're using to mount your tombstones. Put the two pieces into that 2x4, hammer them into the ground, leaving about an inch above the 2x4, and mount your tombstone. Now, I had a little trouble with the first one, and it was my first try at mounting them. I found that it works a lot better if you hammer in your mounting rods and then give them a few taps side to side to give them a little bit of play. The reason for that, of course, is because not all of the holes for the PVC are perfectly aligned and perfectly parallel and vertical. So you need a little bit of play. But easy installation, all of them set up in probably about 5 minutes. So there you go. That's the easy way of setting them up in your Halloween graveyard.
And there you have it. I'm in the way. There they are. Tombstones. Just a little bit of latex paint and some imagination, and Bob's your uncle. Actually, Bob was my uncle, but he's deader than I am. So, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you again next week with yet another woodworking video.